Alrighty then, it's time for our Week 2 Power Rankings for the ABL. Once again hosted by me, Tsumami, and Sketch AV, Sketch Assault Vest, Sketch Always Victorious.
What is up, everybody? It is me, Sketch AV. Hyped to be here, Week 2.
Lots of exciting, fun matches.
3
None
6-0s.
lasting more than 100 turns.
What was
and
that?
all under 100 matches.
Oh,
100
yes,
turns,
thank
sorry.
God for that. Thank you. 3 different 6-0s this week, which is
Right.
kind of crazy.
Yeah, last week 3 5-0s, so
Yeah.
it's exciting to see where everyone lands.
Yeah, and I actually noticed while I was doing this that it's pretty balanced right now. We have 3 teams that are 2-0, 3 teams that are 0-2, and then 6 teams that are 1-1. So it's kind of like the 25-50, 25 split.
Nice.
Yeah,
We'll
nice
see
and
if that
balanced.
continues.
Yeah. Alright, so
Probably
let's
not.
go ahead and get into the lists. And we can start with your number 12. Actually, I believe
My
we
number
both have
12?
the same number 12 as last week.
Yeah, we do. Now, should we start with yours? Let's start with yours this week.
Alright, well, I kept the LA Dugtrios hosted by Catastrophe at 12 this week. And really, it's not even that he played worse than he did last week, or that he played like significantly bad this week, but it's kind of hard to move a team up after they lose in a 6-0 loss. A lot of the issues that I have written down are from the beginning of the game. Real quick, I just want to say, when you have a mon like Swampert, or really anything with a 4x weakness, you have to play like a little more like scouting to watch out for hidden powers, because you can guarantee every single week somebody's bringing hidden power grass. And while there wasn't really a huge way for for him to know that, or there wasn't like an obvious way for him to know that, I would just say play like a little bit more careful around it, because Swampert did really well in this matchup, and it kind of just went down way quicker than it needed to. The big thing here, Mega Altaria. Watching that replay and seeing that kind of makes me cringe.
Yeah,
you
that
have
hurt
to
me
make sure
too.
that you look at the speed tiers before you get into the game, because I know that was the reason you stayed in there is because you thought Mega Altaria outsped Kyurem, which it does not. I actually think that switching to Altaria there in the first place was kind of a poor move, because at that point I believe Swampert was low enough HP that Kyurem could have gone for an ice move anyway, and it would have likely taken it down depending on his investments. So switching into Altaria there was risking it either way, and as you found out the hard way, it didn't really pay off that well. Regirock, I think you kind of clung to it this week a little too much after it was tricked. You were better off just firing off Stone Edges if you had it, rather than the Ice Punches and Drain Punches, because he was able to just like switch into Tapu Fini immediately, predicting that, and just kind of like nerf it out and make it do nothing. And later in the match, there were just turns where I feel like you could have gone for like a sack on the Regirock, since it wasn't really doing too much for you anymore anyway, but you kind of like clung to it. I believe it was actually like the last mon that went down on your team. I just think that after it got tricked, it could have been, or it wasn't as important as how you made it seem, if that makes sense. Like I said, I think you played a little too risky with the offensive threats, that being Mega Altaria and Swampert, and that kind of had you on the back foot from the start. Later in the match, when there was Landorus and Tornadus on the field, and yeah, this is another offensive threat that I think you played a little too risky with, because at this point you were really on the back foot and you needed to keep your offensive threats safe. Landorus running Stone Edge is pretty common. It would have been nice to scout out for the Choice Scarf Lando, because that's a really common set. This is a turn where I think that you could have swapped into Regirock, and if he wasn't choiced, then, you know, oh well, the Choice Specs Regirock that wasn't really doing much anyway goes down. But it's better than the Tornadus going down there, which kind of crippled your team. But that's really all the notes that I have for this battle. Like I said, it wasn't that you played like particularly badly, but I would have to see a closer match before I could actually move you up higher on the list.
No, I definitely agree with a lot you have to say. One thing, and I brought this up last week, and this was definitely one of the best matches to bring it. You have Slowking, Tangrowth, and Tornadus T as Regenerator, and I don't know why only one of them came. Slowking had a good matchup because it was able to do damage to his team, and Tangrowth just like ate up a lot of the hits, especially the ones Swampert wasn't wanting to take. You brought the Rotom Freeze with Will-O-Wisps again, Hex, and for starters, Will-O-Wisp, I feel like I would have preferred to see Toxic just because the main thing you were using Will-O-Wisp Hex on was the Cresselia, who would have much rather taken more exponential residual damage than the half burn. And overall, he didn't do it as much, but he could have definitely played around with the Tapu Fini Misty terrain more, and so the whole set could have been countered by that. And you gotta play more out there, man. With his bulk, the best way you're gonna win is by making predictions on him, and I did not see enough of that. And overall, I think your prep was a bit lackluster. Like the Will-O-Wisp Hex I mentioned, the Aerial Ace on Hitmontop I don't exactly understand, and Blizzard is a risky play, man. Risky play. You've missed that twice.
As you found out the hard way.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with what you said about Regenerator, especially when you're going against a team like Articulus. Is it Articulus or Articulus? I don't know, I'm going to say Articulus. When you go against a team like his, you really are going to want those Regenerator mons because he had a 100 plus game the week before, so you know his playstyle is very very bulky. So you got to watch out for that. Make sure that you're keeping your team alive long enough to take down his walls.
For sure. So that's really all we have to say. At my number 12, I have Apollo and the Portland Porygons. Apollo bringing Mew, Zygarde 50, Mega Scizor, Arcanine, Primarina, and Cofagrigus. Now, I have him at 12 again, not only because he was my 12th last week, and I think that people did some better than him, but he went down to J, and I also have a lot of problems with how J played. So, for you, though, I don't think you prepped enough. Jay has a pretty bulky team as well. I didn't see enough wall breakers on your team. You did try to exploit his 3 mons that had a fire weakness, but all you really did was spam fire moves, especially against the Audino. And so had you bring more specified prep, I think you could have done a lot more work there. And you did Morning Sun against the Celesteela with Arcanine, and that did cost you him because he did have the Stone Edge. So I think you do need to be a bit more cautious. What about you?
Looking at it, I had to move Apollo down 1 this week. This was a really close game, and like I said last week, Apollo actually has one of my favorite teams in the league, just looking at it, but I would really like to see him use it a little bit more effectively. This week his prep just seemed really, really basic and really standard. We saw Swords Dance, Bullet Punch, Scizor, Will-O-Wisp, Hex, Cofagrigus, Dragon Dance, Zygarde, Flare Blitz, Morning Sun, Arcanine. These are all things that you would see in the, common, showdown ladder tiers. But, when we're playing league battles, you have to be a little bit more wild and unpredictable. Especially, like you said, against a bulky team like his. You have the mons there, especially with a mon like Mew. Even Mew seemed kind of standard this week. You have the potential to do some really crazy things with that sitting there. And I'd just like to see a little bit more, unpredictability in what you're bringing to the table. Like I said earlier about Kurt's Swampert, you have to be really careful with the Mega Scizor scouting out for the Flamethrower. And I feel like this is something that's just going to come up a lot. So anybody who has a 4 times weak mon on their team, take this advice. Be really, really careful. Maybe even consider running Protect 1 week for scouting purposes. Because the Scizor in this week did so much work to his team. There wasn't really anything that he had that wanted to switch in on a really strong Scizor move. And it just ended up going down, I believe, the first time it hit the field. Granted, it took Audino with it, but I think that it would have been a lot better off just staying in the back and not going down immediately, especially when you hadn't seen all of Audino's moves. And if you scouted out, then you would have seen that Audino does get Flamethrower. Leaving Primarina in against the Chestnut, I think, was an unnecessary risk, and obviously it didn't pay off because it got one-shot by the Wood Hammer. And there was, this was where Scizor could have come in right here, because granted, it doesn't hit Chestnut super effectively, but Chestnut doesn't really want to deal with it that much either. Or you could have set up a Swords Dance Woodhammer on Scizor wasn't going to do anything. I don't really know what your set was. You might have had Roost, so that even if you did do something, you could have just roosted it off. But, yeah, no, I don't really have too much else to say. Like I said, I just want to see a little bit more unpredictability with your sets, because I really like your team, and I think that of all the teams that are 0-2 right now, this one's the most due for a win based on like the way that he drafted, and I look forward to seeing that happen in the future.
I feel it. Now to finish up this little set of 3, I have the LA Raichargers, coached by Honor, at 11. You have him at 10. You wanna say why?
Yeah. LA Raichargers, coached by Honor. I had to drop them a significant amount this week, as they did get 6-0'd by Rebel. And okay, so first thing I want to say, and this isn't really like a huge criticism, I just want to mention that you had to play really carefully scouting for knockoffs with the Alolan Marowak. I know you said that you forgot Ferrothorn even gets knockoff, which is, understandable. Sometimes we forget
then that's
things.
bad prep.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we forget things, but I mean, you really have to be careful, because once that thick club's gone, Alolan Marowak is hardly even viable. Nowhere near as viable as it would be with it. Lucario with Inferno Overdrive, it could have been cool, but I don't really see a world where he would have left Ferrothorn in on a Lucario anyway. I think that it would have been a smarter prep to maybe bring like Z Ice Punch or something before the Donphan, because I think Donphan was the more likely wall to come in against Lucario, which is
it did way too much work against his team.
What was that?
It did way too much work against his team.
Yeah, and it was his go-to switching on Lucario, as we saw. He went for Inferno Overdrive, and the Donphan switched in and ate it up, which is unfortunate. But like I said, there wasn't really any world where a Ferrothorn would stay in on a Lucario anyway, unless he absolutely had to. So just be a little bit more, I guess, unpredictable with the Z moves that you decide to use. Because, just start looking at what you think they're going to switch into when that thing's on the field, and, choose your Z move accordingly. I like the prediction using Thunderwave when Zapdos was in. That was pretty helpful. I don't know if Flygon was carrying Defog this week or not. If it was, then you definitely should have used it sooner. Well, I mean, you didn't use it at all, but this is the second week in a row where Hazards really screwed your team up, because I believe... Yeah, this was the team that suffered through webs last week, and now I believe there were spikes and stealth rocks that he had to deal with. Your team really, really needs to have a hazard removal, especially against teams teams that bring Galvantula, teams that bring Ferrothorn. You're really going to want to have hazard removal somewhere, and I believe he doesn't have too many options for hazard removal, so Flygon's a must bring, and if you do bring it, it has to have Defog. I like to think that it's the defensive Pokemon that win the games. So, if you're going to defeat your opponent, you have to identify which Pokemon take down their walls the best. And unfortunately, I don't think that he played that well around it. I know there was a turn where he could have gone into, I believe... Yeah, actually, the first turn where he switched into Marowak is what I'm thinking of. I don't see why he didn't just switch into Mega Venusaur there, because if it went for a knockoff, it wouldn't have done anything since it has a Mega Stone. It can't Leech Seed you, it can't Power Whip you and do too much damage. All it would have done is maybe Gyro Ball, which you could synthesize off, and return with the Hidden Power Fire that you had prepped. So I think sending in a Alolan Marowak was just kind of unnecessary. It was aggressive. Yeah, and
he had the HP Fire for it.
Yeah, it was an aggressive play, and sometimes you have to play like that, but not as early into the match before you scouted out their sets. But yeah, that's about all I have to say for this week. Oh wait, actually I would say, since you have very few hazard removing options, I would recommend maybe bringing something with Taunt. I know Porygon 2 gets Magic Coat, which could be interesting, although I don't really know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how viable it would be, but just consider options of how to prevent them from setting up hazards in the first place if you're not going to go with a defogger that week. But
yeah, what do you have for sure. Say? For me, honestly, I don't think he played bad necessarily. I think he did his best. But there were just a few things. Again, the prep for Donphan. The Donphan just demolished his team. It ate up the hits it needed to take, and it put out enough offensive pressure too. I don't see why you brought Sludge Bomb on Mega Venusaur. He has 2 immunities and 2 resists on his team. And another thing that I actually said for, I believe, Kurt is like, he has a bulky team, and I didn't see enough predictions to counter that. And honestly, just the thick club on Marowak really, like, I think it honestly scared you that you had, I'm trying to think, like, Marowak put in a lot of work against his team, and that it got crippled, you'd, like, started to psych yourself out. Because you kept it in, but Marowak counters in OU Zapdos, but in draft league format, things can bring specific counters, so I don't think you weren't in the right headspace for this match. But that's all I really have to say. This is where our lists start to even out, actually. So at number 9, we both have the Charlotte Beedrills, coached by Jay. What do you have to say?
Yeah, and I actually believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that Jay moved up for me and down for you. Am I wrong on that?
I believe you were right.
Yeah, so that's interesting. There were some notes I would just say. The big one is Celesteela. It could have done a lot more that match if you had preserved it better. It did take down the Arcanine, which is what you sent it in to do, so I mean, I guess mission accomplished. But looking at his team, like, I've used the Autotomize Beast Boost set for Celesteela, and that thing is deadly. And I'm just gonna warn you guys now, watch out for that, because you will get swept really quick if you're not prepared to deal with that. But, you know, like, I think that was your win con. I mean, granted, you did end up winning the match anyway, but you kind of threw your win con out of the way sooner than it needed to.
You could have won better.
Yeah, and I mean, he didn't have too many switch-ins for Arcanine, but I think that was a turn where it might have just been smarter to go into something that could maybe recover that damage off and just stall it out, like maybe Mega Audino or Reuniclus, rather than just sacking off one of your few offensive mons, because he didn't really bring too much offense to the table this week. I don't know what the 4th move on Sneasel was this week, but knockoff would have been nice. I didn't see a Dark Stab move, which would have hurt the Mew and the Cofagrigus. I think Substitute on Sneasel was interesting. I don't think it was particularly good or bad, but it got the job done.
Yeah,
it got the Toxic off on Mew and Cofagrigus. I would never really expect to see a sub Sneasel just because of how frail it is and easy to break the sub anyway. But I mean, I think it was used effectively this week, and I like seeing that. Unfortunately, the Alolan Muck got critical hit really early on, but I did like to see the revenge kill with Chestnut against Primarina, and Taunt on the Cofagrigus was really cool also, especially followed up with the switch into Audino predicting the Hex. Granted, Jay's not really in the league anymore, so there isn't too much I could advise him to do. But I'm going to miss seeing, you know, what he brings to the table as a coach, but I'm sure his replacement has just as much to bring to the table.
Yeah, you basically hit most of what I wanted to say. Mega Audino, I'm still really shaky on that mon, because, like, it does wall, like, the Arcanine pretty well, but it just didn't have the damage to, like, do anything back. And the thing had Morning Sun, so that's where you did have to go into your Celesteela. You also brought Muck in against the Arcanine to use Curse. If you had been running Figgy Berry, I could see that as its only real recovery, but the Arcanine would have eventually killed you. A better answer would have, and letting Muck go down, it would have been a better answer for Cofagrigus or Mew later down the line. Celesteela was not the play I would have done on Arcanine either, just because, again, as Sketch had said, it was a win con later on, the Autonomized Sweep. It did live the hit, and had it not go for Morning Sun, you would have been O-code there, and you were fishing for a Stone Edge miss, but I do think it was a good bring this week. You had amazing prep, and I think that really did carry you through this match, but I do think you could have executed it a lot better. Taunt was cool, and you played around the Hex, the Cofag with Audino, and overall I think it was a pretty solid match. Just a few kind of big misplays there.
Yeah. So
at number 8.
Yeah, we both have Lupus and the Shining Suicune. And do you want to talk about them first?
Yeah. So I think he played good. I do have to criticize him for a few things, but he did play great. However, he is playing last week at least our number one in the league, Shiv, and so I don't think he really was able to step up to the plate, if that makes sense. Like, I noted Acid Spray on Electros was nice, but it still didn't have enough damage output. I think you should have brought Suicune this week, just because, like I said, Electros didn't have the damage output, so you might as well have added more bulk to your team against a bulky team. Looking at it now, this league is full of bulky teams. Wow. Again, a bulky team Shiv, and so you seemed better off trying to out-bulk it rather than to wall break with something that doesn't wall break. You had no removal, and it really dicked you over. He got 3 spikes up because when he kept clicking knockoff or sucker punch, which that was quite the mind games there, but I do think you could have done that better. And don't future sight the dark type. You had future sight, and it did force in Drapion to take it to make sure nothing went down, but you didn't have anything that really answered the Drapion.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Looking at the matches this week, there were actually like 2 parts that just make me cringe every time I see it. The first I already mentioned was the leaving Mega Altaria in against Kyurem, and the second is the way Honchkrow was used here. And
yeah,
I get it, like, Sucker Punch, you get stubborn and you really just want to take it down before it attacks you, maybe keep the Honchkrow alive. But I mean, you have to think about it. Even if he did go for an attacking move and you got to keep the Honchkrow alive, something was just going to come in and revenge kill it anyway, unless you wanted to preserve it. But at that point it had no HP left and it was running Life Orb, so that was just kind of a point of the game where you had to accept that Honchkrow wasn't going to be doing too much more for you anyway. It was better for you to just finish off the Scoldipede and stop it from setting up any more spikes than it already did, or if you had Defog, which I don't believe you did, then go for that and then maybe try to finish it off. But you weren't able to even take down the Scoldipede, and you let him get all of his spike layers up and then preserve it. Granted, the preservation of the Scoldipede didn't matter too much in the long run because it didn't come back on the battlefield at all. But in terms of differential, it was just one less that you didn't actually need. Sigilith seemed kind of weird to me this week because it's so easily stopped by Drapion, as you found out the hard way. Whirlwind on Drapion was really cool to see, and it did the job right. I don't even know if he was whirlwinding predicting the setup or just whirlwinding to get more spikes damage, but it actually ended up doing both, which is really nice on Shiv's part. But I didn't really quite understand Sigilith's role in this match. It was rocking out with Thunder Wave, Cosmic Power, Future Sight, and something else that I don't think was revealed. I don't really remember. But generally, like, the Sigilith sets that I've seen is like the obvious Cosmic Power, Stored Power setup, and I don't know, like, maybe Stored Power was the last move he had, or maybe it was Roost to stay alive. But if it was Roost, I don't really see what it was doing other than just sitting there and using Future Sight. But without any kind of like special attack boosts, Future Sight wasn't going to do anything to Slowbro that could have just came in, calm-minded up, and then ended up taking you down anyway. So I was really just kind of confused as to what Sigilith was supposed to do. I couldn't tell if it was like an offensive setup mon or a defensive wall, but it didn't really end up serving well as either. Unfortunately, this was just, like, I think probably the toughest matchup of the week. This is a really tough match for Lupus, mainly because of the Mega Slowbro that he had like no answers for on his team outside of Electros, which isn't really a reliable offensive threat. Still, I definitely think that there were ways that he could have prepped or played better to do well in this match. Like I said earlier, letting the Scoldipede set up 3 layers of spikes and take out your only defogger was just a huge mistake. I think running Toxic on one of your mons this week would have been nice to deal with the Slowbro, since you didn't really have too many answers for it. Still, I wouldn't beat myself up too much after this loss, because Shiv has one of the most threatening teams in the league, and we did both have him at number 1. But just be sure that you identify better ways to prep for your opponent's bigger offensive and defensive threats in the next week.
For sure, I definitely agree.
Alright, so moving on. At number 7, we both have King and the Florida Fennekins. Now, I think I'm going to start just because this was your match. Now, he's bringing Metaga, Gardevoir, Galvantula, Dugtrio, Greninja, Mamoswine, and Salamence. Now, I was looking at your team, and in your entire draft, you have, a very hyper-offensive team. And it does save your differential, but I do think you need to grab a wall or two. Registeel and Audino, yes, they are bulky. But Registeel has only really rest as its reliable recovery, and Audino doesn't output quite enough damage. So, Crobat gave you a lot of problems in this match. You had to sack something off every single time that thing came in. Its speed tier is crazy. And turn 1, I would have gone for Thunder, even if he does switch in Croak, because if he's Scarf Crocodile, then your Sash procs on Galvantula and it goes down, and if he's Focus Sash Crocodile, then you can two-shot it and outspeed it. You did mispredict.
Actually, if you don't mind me interrupting, and I hope he doesn't mind that I reveal this. He did tell me after the match that he had Choice Scarf Galvantula this week instead of Focus Sash to take down Crobat if it was in against it, or Togekiss. So I'll just put that out there, just because if he went for Thunder with his set and I switched to Crocodile, then he would have been at a disadvantage, and that kind of explains some of the other plays that he went for also later with it.
Well, then I definitely would have taken advantage of that. And with your Milotic, you got a burn on Galvantula. However, even with just a decent roll, it still would have killed. And reversal on Dugtrio, it was nice because you have Focus Sash and then it does max damage, but it's not stab on Dugtrio, and Aggron has filter, which reduces it to 3/4 of the damage. And overall, again, it's just I don't think you played bad at all. I just don't think that your team can take enough hits.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about your opponent?
Looking at it, and I noticed this in my prep, nothing on his team really appreciated a choice band Crobat, and we'll get more into my sets later because that's what I ended up bringing. But the one thing that did actually deal with that, he chose not to bring, that being Registeel. And if he had a Registeel in the back, then this game could have been a lot different. I think maybe Registeel over Dugtrio, just because I think the Dugtrio was really only there to deal with Mega Aggron and also Raikou. Granted, I was running Shed Shell for the Dugtrio, so it really didn't do too much in this battle. But I just think that having Registeel there, you really need, like Tsumami said, you need that defensive presence on your team, because every single thing got either 1-hit or 2-hit KO'd by Choice Band, Brave Bird, and nothing outsped it without a Scarf. Speaking of Scarf, I really don't think that this was the best week to run Choice Scarf Galvantula. I can definitely understand why you brought it, with what it would do to Crobat and maybe Togekiss. But granted, I was running. Well, we'll get to my sets later. But it really limits what it was able to do to my team. And if you look at my team's composition, Galvantula puts in a lot of work against my team, because my only electric switching, except for Raikou, of course, but it was Crocodile, which is weak to Bug, and this was a match where I had to keep Raikou a little healthier to deal with other threats. That's why turn 1 I just left Togekiss in against it instead of switching out to Raikou. But I also left the Togekiss in just because it was such a big threat that I would have rather gotten some damage off if you went for the webs and then let Togekiss go down, because how much Galvantula was able to do to my team. So throwing the Choice Scarf on there really just kind of limited it. This was something that could have possibly gone on to sweep the rest of my team, late game maybe. That and also Mamoswine. Mamoswine legit just took down my entire team. Has super effective coverage for everything except for Milotic. And even Milotic doesn't really want to take Life Orb Earthquake all that much, except for maybe with the Marvel Scale that I had. I didn't really count that too much. But I just would have liked to see the Mamoswine used a little bit more aggressively, you could see it started getting like close to a mini sweep towards the end of the game. If I had missed Aqua Tail and Crocodile, then I would have lost the game, because the Mamoswine would have taken down Crocodile, would have taken down Raikou, would have taken down Togekiss. There really wasn't many answers, or there really weren't many answers that I had to the Mamoswine. So it's kind of a shame that it stayed in the back the whole game. It came in once to get the Stealth Rocks up, but I really think that you could have been better off like coming in and like maybe going for like an attacking move, just because this wasn't really a week where Stealth Rocks were too much of an influence on the outcome of the battle. While we're analyzing sets, I do want to say I don't think this is the best week for Dragon Dance Salamence. I know, Dragon Dance Salamence is one of the best Dragon Dance users in the game, and it's really tempting for this reason, but you have to identify which teams it really does well against. This wasn't a week where Salamence had a high chance to actually succeed with Dragon Dance Sweep, because, my team has an Intimidate user in Crocodile, Haze user in Milotic, 5 Thunderwave users to cripple the speed, and a Mega that resists both of its stabs. And, just bringing it in and setting up on the Aggron, I can understand, because at this point you were so far on the back foot that you had to do something to shift the momentum. Yeah. But this is a week where, I know Salamence is really like a huge physical threat, but running Fire Blast this week, I did the calcs after the game was over. Even if you had a minus special attack nature and no EVs in special attack, Fire Blast still would have done 40 to 50% to Mega Aggron, which is equivalent to a +1 Adamant Earthquake critical hit. So like that's with the attack boost and critical hit, and it would end up doing the same thing. I do think that you played really well. Just be sure that you identify what your win conditions are, because this week it was definitely Mamoswine and Galvantula, and you just kind of left them in the back for the most part. But that's all I really have to say about that.
Alright. Moving on to number 6. This is again where things get a bit shaky. Number 6.
Did you want to go with your number 6 or my number 6?
My number 6.
Well, that would be you.
No, let's actually skip that one.
Okay, we won't talk about you. Alright, well, at my number 6, we have iRebel and the Toronto Staraptors. I think this was a really good week for the Toronto Staraptors, coming off of their week 1 loss. This really shifted the momentum of the team. Donphan just really put in the work defensively and offensively, and it just pairs really well with the Ferrothorn. Like, I love seeing that defensive core of Donphan and Ferrothorn. Ferrothorn with the knockoff on the Marowak was huge, and it was a really... granted, I don't think it was predicting the Marowak switch-in. It could have been, and if it was, then that's awesome. Bulky Zapdos was a huge defensive threat and was able to outlast the Marowak and take it down. Really, I don't have too many bad things to say about the way Rebel played this week. The main issue I have is leaving Victini in on turn 1 against Manaphy. All that you were really doing was... Well, first off, you're revealing that you have a Choice Scarf, because there's no reason why, like an unscarfed Victini would stay in and go for U-turn on a Manaphy. At that point, it's not even like maybe he speed tied. It's like, this is definitely Choice Scarf. And the amount of damage that you're doing with the U-turn isn't really worth revealing it that early into the game. And then you're also risking the chance that he was Scarf Manaphy, which, as you found out the hard way, he was, and you ended up losing most of the HP on your Victini on turn 1 for really nothing, because the U-turn, like I said, just doesn't do as much as what you are risking. You have to think a lot about risk versus reward when you're playing this game. Granted, you did pull it back. You started off with like very little momentum because of that play, but you did pull it back and get the 6, so I really don't have too many other things to say. So really solid week for Toronto Staraptors. Keep up the good work, I guess.
Yeah, no, I'm just gonna suck his dick too, because he played amazing. There was a really good knockoff on Marowak, and it crippled its attack, so it like did nothing. And you roosted against it when you could have taken it out. And at first I was like, oh, why is he doing that? There's no point. But it actually like Roost takes out your flying type, so it made Stone Edge a neutral non-stab attack from thick clubless Marowak, so you ended up preserving your Zapdos really well. You had good hazard stack with Ferrothorn, and I don't even know what hidden power it was, but it was the right one because it hit a lot of things neutral.
That was hidden power flying, I believe.
Hidden Power Flying. Wow.
Yeah, for the stab. Because I think he wanted to choose that over, I think it was like Air Cutter that Zapdos gets, because he didn't want to risk the miss chances, which is completely understandable because hacks changes games.
Well, we know. And you brought 4 of the right sets. The reason I have you so high is because you were able to beat him only using 4 of your Mons. We never saw Pangoro or Cobalion ever touch the field. And you played your bulk really well. You have one of those, like, we both talked about, me especially, like Audino, for example, how it just doesn't have enough damage output, even though it does take hits. But you have the right mix of damage to bulk. The perfect example being Donphan, who, like, ate a lot of the hits. It took the Infernal Overdrive amazing from Lucario, and it has the power to back it up. Next up, at our number 5s, we have you.
That's me. And why don't you talk about me first, and then I guess I'll identify, whatever criticisms you have. We can discuss it a little further.
Do I have criticisms?
Do you?
Not really.
That's awesome.
I think
huh?
You played amazing, and I think your prep was just stellar. I loved the Flame Ward Milotic for the... Oh, it's completely skipping my mind. Marvel Scale. You had the perfect coverage on Aggron. We never got to see it, but you had Shed Shell, Raikou. You had the Aura Sphere. Crobat just put on so much pressure this game. Came in, he had to sack off something because nothing wanted it. And it really gave you the upper hand to just scare out everything he had. Your differential may have been a 2-0, and that's, as I said earlier, just because you have such an offensive team. But you played beautiful, and you really established yourself as a threat.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, looking at the team, in terms of individual mons, there really isn't too much I could say. Crobat, as I mentioned earlier, just put in so much work against King's team, and the only thing that really wanted to deal with it was Registeel, which didn't show up this week. And I was so happy, when I saw no Registeel, because, literally, you can go check the calcs. There's nothing else on his team that appreciates a hit from Crobat. And, Mega Aggron, I really like the coverage that I chose to run this week. It's a solid offensive and defensive threat. And I think that's something that a lot of people sleep on, is how good Mega Aggron is offensively with a base 110 attack stat. It's really crazy. And, I had never used Mega Aggron before this league, but I'm really loving it so far.
Yeah. It's putting in the work.
Yeah, it really has been. The team that I brought, I noticed this right as the game started. It had no answers for Mamoswine. And, this is a week where I probably should have brought Buzzwole just to maybe deal with that pressure. But, I just didn't think about it until I saw it on the field. And I was like, oh no, I am severely under-prepped for this Mamoswine. But, I was also missing switch-ins for Galvantula. There really wasn't much I could do about that. Nothing really wanted to take on the Galvantula on my entire team. But really, the big issue that I had with my play was switching Crobat in on the Gardevoir Hyper Voice was a bad move looking back on it. Granted, Crobat was still able to go on and get 2 more KOs after that, but it took it down to exactly 50%, which, I could have preserved it better since, of course, I can't run Choice Banded Roost. But, if I had just kept Crobat healthier, it would have probably gone on to get, I think, 4 KOs since there was no Registeel. And with Crobat being my win condition, switching into something else against the Gardevoir, even switching into Mega Aggron and just sacking that off would have been smarter than letting Crobat take as much damage as it did. In terms of differential, it wasn't the best win, but, at the end of the day, a win is a win, and I'll take it. Hopefully it won't be my last win, and I'm really glad to have my very first win of any league, since this is my first league. So I'm hyped.
I actually disagree with what you said about the bringing in Crobat against Gardevoir, because I do think it put in a lot of offensive pressure.
Yeah, no, for sure. It was just one of those things where bringing in, it risked the Psychic or Psyshock that could have taken it down right there, and I believe King actually told me that he was really, really thinking about going for Psychic on that turn, and if he had, that would have screwed me up for the whole game. That was one of those turns, I talked about, risk versus reward earlier when we were talking about Rebel, and I just think that it really wasn't worth risking it with that, and it wasn't worth losing as much HP, because at that point, after one Brave Bird, I was down to like really little health, where I actually was only able to fire off 2 Brave Birds as opposed to like the 4 or 5 that I could have if I just stacked something else off to the Mega Gardevoir. Because honestly, Mega Gardevoir wasn't too threatening to me this week. I did say that it was one of the most threatening Megas last week, just not necessarily to my team with a Steel-type Mega and with Crobat, but...
Yeah, I can definitely see it.
I'm loving Crobat too. Crobat's awesome.
I
really
don't
just
want
like
to talk
my
about
team
this one.
overall. I'm really satisfied
Yeah,
with it.
alright.
There were some
So
issues I
humble.
had with it, but I just made some free agent trades after the week 3 battle, and now I'm even more satisfied with it. But moving on to my number 4 and your number 6.
No. Oh
no,
my gosh.
you don't want to. Well, we have to talk about you, man. We have
Alright.
Tsumami and the Seattle Salandit. And do you want me to talk about you first, or do you want to go first?
I kind of want to talk about myself first, just because you actually moved me up, and I think that was more so just because it's where it's that everyone else kind of played worse, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't have anywhere else to put me. So, okay, I'm gonna address this now.
Yeah, well, actually, fun fact, Seattle Salandit is the only team on my list that lost their match and still moved up. So, it does happen, you guys. It does happen.
No, I don't want to talk about that. I kind of forgot. I didn't exactly check my team. So, Slowbro didn't have Regenerator. And that kind of cost me the match. Because I couldn't... That thing was like my only answer to like the Latias with its Specs Draco. And I would have to slack off. I didn't get that extra 30 that I was hoping for. I didn't switch it out against the knockoff either. And that almost cost me Slowbro right there. And I almost growthed against Weavile. Like, looking back on it, I had no reason not to. Had I done that, the Tracer wouldn't have been able to pull off his sick, nasty play that no one could have prepped for. Looking at what I did good, I think
you said you almost
honestly,
used growth on Weavile, or did you mean Serena?
Like, well, both. I could have honestly growthed on either, but I didn't have enough turns of Sun. But
yeah,
hindsight 2020. But looking at what I did good, I really liked my Silvally set. How it had Flame Charge and enough speed to outspeed the Aerodactyl. Not that it came in because he had Scarf Infernape, but I thought that was cool. I Reflect Charizard because I knew that Charizard begs Aerodactyl to come in, so getting a Reflect Up was nice. That, the Sun, and then bringing in Silvally. The Aqua Tail did nothing. And I did pick the right moment to sack off Zard to get in the Sun for Venusaur. Again, not that it mattered, he completely destroyed me, but I think I played okay bringing what I did bring. What do you have to say?
The reason why I moved you up this week, even though you took the loss, is one, you lost to a team that we both had in the top 3, and we both have in the top 3 again this week. Spoilers, even though you can see on the screen he's not this low. Tracer's prep was ridiculous. I don't think any team actually prepped as well as he did this week, because the Seattle Salandit have a lot of threats on there, and he was just able to just counter every single threat. Granted, the lack of Regenerator, I firmly actually believe, is what lost you the game. I think that if Slowbro could have been preserved, that really would have come back and won, which I hate to say. It's not like I'm not trying to throw that in your face, because I know that kind of sucks to look back on. But also, just the way that you played Slowbro was pretty poor. It was actually played beautifully up until Weavile. For whatever reason, if there was ever a Weavile on the other side, like, Slowbro just got, choked under the pressure and just did bad plays. Because, just staying in and slacking off wasn't really the best play.
I don't exactly reveal what he brought.
Huh?
But I was just saying, I don't want to reveal, the hidden tech until it comes up to him, because he's later down the line, but I don't think I was mentally stable after he pulled off what he did.
Yeah, that was crazy. All right, I won't reveal then what he did either. I was going to, but we'll wait till we get there. I just want to say rip to that Venusaur. Like,
Yeah,
that Venusaur, it had the potential to do really well, but
I almost
not
swapped
against
him.
Tracer's prep. But yeah, back to like the Slowbro and Weavile battle. Yeah, going for slack offs against Weavile really wasn't the best plan, just because Weavile hits like a truck. One of my favorite mons, which is why my team's the Winston Weaviles. It was kind of cool to see Weavile put in work, so shout out to Tracer for that. But yeah, I think that was definitely a play where you should have swapped out the Slowbro for something in the back, just because even without the regenerator, Slowbro was really, really good. I think it was your defensive win con. And then towards the end, at this point, it was kind of, I think you might have been in a place where you just accepted defeat. But I think that going for the Scald, when it came down to, I think you had Slowbro and Thundurus left against Weavile, and I forget what the rest of his team was. But, you know, you went for a slack off just hoping that like maybe you could stay alive there. Really, it would have been your better play to just opt for Scald and hope for the burn. At that point, if you did get the burn, I think there was a chance that Thundurus could have come back and won it for you even still. I could be wrong on that, but it definitely would have helped with differential purposes.
Knowing Tracer, there was no way. His prep was just too good.
Yeah. I really like Reflect on Megazard Y. That was pretty cool to see. It was nice tech, and it helped the Silvally out at the beginning. Yeah. And I actually also, like you said, I loved seeing the Silvally set. The Sun Boosted Flame Charge was really cool. Because usually Flame Charge is just one of those moves where you use it, like, not so much for damage purposes, but for the, just like for the speed boost that you get from it. But, you know, it even, like, did a lot of damage when it was used just because of, like, the sun being out. And this was something, this was another mon that had the chance to sweep, but again, Tracer's prep was ridiculous this week, and Scarf Infernape came out, used your own sun against you with a Flare Blitz, and, yeah, Infernape was such a good bring this week, you know, knowing that there was going to be drought out. That thing just had so much potential to just destroy lives. Like, even Slowbro wouldn't have really appreciated a sun boosted Flare Blitz from Infernape all that much. But
30% when it switches.
Yeah. But that's really about all I have to say. Like I said, I did move you up because I think that you played really well outside of you know, forgetting Regenerator on Slowbro and just the way that you played Slowbro against Weavile. Other than that, I really like the tech that I saw, and like just different prep, because I think you prepped pretty well too. Just that Tracer was on another level this week.
No, he's just there. He's Tracer.
So I think we're about ready to reveal the top 3 if you if you're ready to go.
Yeah. And spoiler alert, our top 3 actually hasn't changed.
Has it not? I thought... No, it switched up a little bit.
Changed.
No, it did switch up a little bit because I had King at number 3 last week. Which is one of the reasons why I moved myself up
number 3, I think,
decent amount. Just because I beat something that was like top 3 on my personal list, which I was proud of.
Yeah. So, at our number 3, we have Articulus. And he does what he does best, and he stalled him out. He has damage, yet he also has too many walls. I'm gonna just like personal anecdote. I played him week 3, and you were there. You helped me out.
Yes, I did do mock battles.
Talking everything. It was terrible how much Umbreon does not die. Cresselia does not die. Those things do not die. It was terrible.
Especially not with the Umbreons giving wishes to everything.
Yeah. Umbreon like also has like a crazy amount of HP, so the wishes it passes are just so fat. But getting into the actual battle, HP Grass Kyurem was a great lead. You definitely called him there. Fired off that really just destroyer of worlds, Sub-Zero Slammer. And the trick Cresselia was really, really nice because you identified he has a very physical team, and as such you brought a choice specs, and you gave it to the Regirock, who was like just completely crippled at that point. The Stone Edge for Tornadus Therion, and at the very end you even used Trick again on Cresselia to grab Rotom Frost's leftovers, which was really nice. And overall you just preserved really well. Like I don't have much just because you played so straightforward but so well, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to the anecdote, like you said, he does play Articulus, or he did play him in week 3, and I helped with a mock battle for him, and I'm looking at his team, and like at the very beginning, like right after the draft, I was looking at everyone's team and thinking like who had the best in my opinion, and just like my own personal draft analysis in my head. And I really think that like Articulus's team was just one that I was really sleeping on. Like I think I just like overlooked it because like as I was building with his team, I was like, this dude's team is ridiculous. Like the wall, like he has like I think 2 of the best walls in the league right now with Umbreon and Cresselia both on the same team. Mega Charizard X just hits ridiculously hard. Kyurem as one of his bottom tier picks is really good. I don't see how Kyurem is as low tier as it is. Landorus, Tapu Fini, it's just such a really good team. And like, you know, he has like Gengar, Ditto in the back. So, you know, shout out to you. You drafted really well. I think Scarf Lando was a really nice bring this week. I think the very beginning of the game, you just had so much offensive pressure with first Hidden Power Grass and then Sub-Zero Slammer. It just really threw Kurt off at the very beginning, and I don't think we ever saw him recover in that match. Cresselia crippling the Regirock with the choice specs was really nice. Very effective strategy last week because I think he tricked the Gligar on Jay's team last week also and just shut that thing down. And that's what this Cresselia has been doing so far in this league, is just identifying walls and shutting them down. The only thing that I can criticize you on, this is literally the only thing, is switching Charizard in. This was before it was Mega Evolved. You switched it in when the Rotom Volt switch was really obvious. I believe you had Tapu Fini against Rotom, and it's very clear that like this is a turn where like a Volt switch or a Thunderbolt's going to be used, and you brought in Charizard, which made absolutely no sense to me, and it almost actually ended up going down. I think it dropped to like 25%. You know,
had he had Stealth Rocks up, there was no coming back.
Yeah, definitely. If there were Stealth Rocks, that would have just been the end of Charizard's whole career right there. Would have had to go sit on the bench until next week. Just make sure that you're aware of where you're switching things into. That's really all I can say. Really solid week for the We Need a Name team, which I actually think you should just leave that as your name at this point. So moving to number 2.
He's actually African, so I don't actually think he can come up with a name.
Oh, is he really?
That would make sense. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's why he's like distant and stuff and doesn't respond. It's because he lives in Africa. Just keep that in mind when you play him.
I did not know that. Stay woke. So, number 2, we have your opponent for this week, and we've already talked about this dude's ridiculous.
I want to kill him. Because, oh my gosh, he destroyed me. Which is honestly, which is kind of a sad thing, because this was actually his final match. He did have like personal issues come up and did have to drop, so he did go out with a bang. For sure. Tracer brought Venetric, Weavile, Latias, Infernape, and Serena, and he played really well. Mega Aerodactyl just put on so much offensive pressure, and just like your match against Kurt, it hardly ever actually came out on the field. It just pressured me to make sure I didn't have that thing come in. The only 2 things I can really criticize are Life Orb Manectric, which you used Manectric primarily as a momentum grabber with Volt Switch, and taking 10% just to switch around wasn't exactly ideal. And Latias, running Specs, Draco, the thing like completely nukes everything, but my main Slowbro, and I would have rather seen a Psyshock or a Psychic, just because taking that dropping 50% special attack wasn't really worth the damage you were doing. However, big reveal. So I'm set up to sweep with Venusaur.
This was, I think, the craziest play of the whole week.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, alright. Obvious play. He's trying to stall out the sun. I'm gonna just Sludge Bomb. I Sludge Bomb, and the thing little starts shaking. I'm like, oh, what's he doing? Kebia Berry activates. He lives. No big deal, right? Boom. Acrobatics. Destroys me.
Okay.
Who does that? Who preps that?
I think anybody who was spectating that match, like, their jaws just hit the floor when they saw that. Like, that's such a specific prep to bring. Like, that's one of those things like where if you just decided not to bring Venusaur, it would have had no point. Like, but it was just so out there. Like, this is the kind of thing that I was talking about with like the lower teams, like Apollo, when I was saying that he should have some like some really creative sets, at least one. Just try one set like this and see where it gets you, because that changed the entire tide of the match, and that's really all it takes.
Yeah. And dream, and sometimes you just gotta go with it.
Yeah.
It wins matches, man. It wins matches.
It really does.
Just continuing to like praise Tracer here. Volt turned Infernape and Manectric and grabbed a lot of me on my heels. Weavile really does exert pressure, both ability-wise and like physically.
Yeah.
And you preserved it well too. Like, you knew that end game it was gonna sweep me, so you kept it around. And honestly, you just played fantastic. I'm sad to see you leave the league, but you ended well.
Yeah, for sure. I would have liked to see a little bit more from Latias. I actually didn't know it was Specs until just now, and I guess maybe that explains a little why. A little bit as to why I didn't do as much. Latias is, like, a choice Specs Latias is really dangerous, because, you know, like, out of the Lati twins, Latias is supposed to be the bulky one. So you give it, like, that natural bulk, and it's hitting hard. That's really difficult to deal with. It's not really his fault that it didn't do too much. You know, like, he tried to use it, but you just had switch-ins for it, which there really isn't too much to do about that. Like, it's not really like a criticism. That's just my personal note. I would have liked to see a little bit more from it. Manectric just had consistent pressure throughout the match. Sacking it off at the end against Slowbro, it was slightly unnecessary. I can definitely understand why, because if the Slowbro decided to go for Scald there instead of Slack Off and got a burn on the Weavile, then that could have cost you the game. But I can definitely understand why. It's just one of those things where, like I mentioned last week, watch out for differential. But Weavile was played just perfectly. Huge threat that was preserved until the end. Scarfed Infernape was key, as I mentioned earlier, in stopping the Silvally sweep and just providing solid offensive pressure, using the Sun against you with the Sun boosted Flare Blitz. I have in all caps here. The only notes I have for Serena is Kebia Acrobatics with question marks.
I have that too.
With question
all
marks.
All caps Kebia Acrobatics.
Because, like, this isn't even like a statement. This is a question. Like, who brings Kebia Berry Acrobatics? But it worked out so perfectly, and that was so cool to see. Mega Aerodactyl getting up to Stealth Rocks was really nice, since you had no hazard removal this week. I think Trace's prep for this match was just phenomenal. Probably the best prep out of any team this week. Even though he's one of the few teams that won their match this weekend, didn't get a 6-0. He still had one of the most impressive victories, just because the prep was insane.
Prep is 50% of the battle, honestly.
Yeah, and like you said, I'm also sad to see him go, just because he's one of the top threats in this league. But I'm sure his replacement, I don't know how to say his name, like maybe like DJ Okra or Jakra or I don't know. Is what?
Jorka.
Oh, okay. I probably will mispronounce that anyway. But I'm really excited to see what he does with the team. He switched up the team a lot, actually, if I remember correctly, dropping Mega Aerodactyl for Mega Swampert. I know he dropped Weavile. I don't know what he picked up in its place, but I do know he grabbed Pelipper instead of Rain. So the team that we have come to love after 2 weeks is getting very, very heavily switched up. I'm excited to see what he does with the team in the future.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Tracer has set you up really well right now at number 2, so we'll see if you can hold on to this position. But moving forward, retaining their number 1 spot from last week, we both have Shiv and the Birmingham Blisseys. Excuse me.
Yeah, you open up. What do you have to say?
Shiv just has one of the most threatening, possibly the most threatening draft in this league. Either him or, like I mentioned earlier, Articulus's team is ridiculous as well. But Shiv has just been using that Mega Slowbro so ridiculously well. I'm scared to go against that thing. And I believe people were talking about it in the Discord too. Like, nobody's like coming up with solid options to take it down. And I mentioned earlier that his opponent Lupus didn't have a really good matchup. And he just took advantage of it, because his only answer to Mega Slowbro is like maybe Electros, if you want to count that. But, once that was gone, there was nothing stopping Mega Slowbro, and it was obviously coming to this match being a huge check to Mega Lopunny. I checked Mega Lopunny's moveset to see if it actually had anything that I wanted to hit Slowbro, and really, if you wanted to run like max special attack, special Lopunny, and bring like Shadow Ball, maybe, but Lopunny's special attack is so bad that I wasn't doing anything. Maybe Thunder Punch could have done it, but Mega Slowbro eats those anyway. So it was just such a good bring this week. Drapion was played perfectly. Whirlwind was nice for stopping the Sigilift setup and forcing things around to take Spike's damage. Rest was nice keeping it around, and it was just a solid offensive threat this week. Snorlax was, he did his job as a special wall and physical attacker, picking up a couple KOs, I believe. And Scolipede, getting 3 layers of spikes up at the very beginning of the game, just crippled Lupus's team throughout the entirety of the game. Kyurem Black still, I think that is just the MVP in this league, even though it still hasn't even touched the battlefield. It's come to, I think even as of week 3, it's come to all 3 games and hasn't done anything. But yeah, really phenomenal match on Shiv's part. And I said last week that if he continued to play as well as he did, he'd find himself at the top of this list regularly, and so far that's exactly what he's doing. There's really not much advice I can give to a team that's only lost 1 Mon in 2 weeks with a plus 11 differential right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really don't have too much else to say about Shiv and the Birmingham Blisseys. Or I've said Blisseys twice, Blisseys, and I think that they've definitely proven themselves as the team to beat right now.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with majority of all of the things you said. Man, Shiv, I called him out last week saying that he beat my number 12, but this week he's like, yeah, no, for sure he's just gonna destroy this league. I think he has such a bulky team that has such great offensive pressure too. Spike God, first week bringing Toxic Spike, this week bringing just regular Spikes, just to like cripple the team. Like I said before, the best way to beat a bulky team is to make predictions and switching when you have to, but you can't make those switches 5% each time. Yeah. Whirlwind was again amazing on Sigilift, not only stopping the sweep but getting off damage. You called out the Sucker Punch. You realized, okay, Scolipede does nothing. I'm better up just trying to get up spikes, and it really worked out for you. Used the Drapion well. Drapion really shined after going down pretty early week 1. Taking hits, rest talk, taking the future sight, and 6-0, you only used 4 of your Mons. Kyurem B, bench warmer of the game, bench warmer of the season.
Oh yes.
And
I'm
really,
keeping the bench
really scared.
nice and warm somehow.
Yeah, I believe I play you last, and I'm scared.
Yeah, you have that to look forward to all season. I think that the matchup I'm looking forward to most in this entire league is Shiv versus Articulus, just because their teams are really similar in the sense that they have huge offensive threats and then walls to just sit there. I really just want to watch that. Like if Articulus had the 100 turn game in week 1, I feel like that's going to be a 500 turn game easily. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
For sure.
But, yeah, that concludes week 2 power rankings. We'll try to have week 3 out pretty soon for you guys as well, so we can get caught up, because we know we're a little bit behind, but week 1 kind of threw us off. Yeah,
for sure. Thank you so much for tuning in to our weekly power rankings, and that being said, go out there and win your matches.
With that, has me, Sketchy V, gonna get us out. Peace!
Tsumami.